this topic is very important to me. I think the world of research is fastly, it's changing rapidly, and we have to adapt with what we do with our research, not only to do the research, but actually how to disseminate it. And so this is why I have developed some exercises that we're going to engage in today to get the basic idea of how else can we disseminate our research. Agenda for today, what we will be covering is going to be 4 parts. The first part is going to be really small. It's just talking about digital literacies. I will kind of do a quick introduction on the affordances of digital and online communication. The second is what I'm arguing that we can do as part of the efforts to disseminate our research. And that is storytelling. And I'll explain to you why I'm saying we have to create stories. And the third one, which is going to be the longest part of this workshop, is the hands-on activities that we'll do. We're going to explore 3 different ways to do storytelling, basically, and then we are really actually going to do one of them. The other 2, we're going to explore them, and then we'll do one of them. And then the last part, which is also important, is the discussion. I'm Dr. Christiansen, so Dr. Sidury Christiansen. I am an associate professor here in Texas, the University of Texas in San Antonio, and I have been a specialist in Russia in 2018 and a keynote at NATE at 2020. And again, I've always looked and studied digital literacy. So it's one of my passions that I hope that I convey in this workshop. So the first, like I said, the first topic is digital literacies. What are the affordances of multimodal communication? Writing and actually all the information right now that we have is inherently multimodal, meaning there is some, visual and some oral and some textual involved. And journals have already realized this. If you notice, once you are submitting an article, they always ask you, right, what is the abstract? So give the abstract form and then give me the highlights. What are the 3 or 5 main points of your article? What are the figures? And if you are familiar with websites such as ResearchGate or Academia, whenever you display your research, they always display, the first thing that they display other than the title are the images and the figures embedded in your presentation. And why is this? Because we all consume information through multimodal means, although we do have a preference. Some people prefer textual because it's faster. Some people present visual because they can, glance it and get the main idea. And some people like me, if you're like me, I do dishes and I listen to podcasts or information about it. So I think it all serves a purpose. But information in general, communication is inherently multimodal. So what I would like you to do right now is get to the chat and write down what are the traditional ways in which research is disseminated right now. What are some of the ways that you will always see, research? So I see that some of you say, well, publications, so a research article, a conference, articles and books, and papers. And I think, all of these, and if you notice, at least the examples that have come, papers and conferences, is primarily 2 modes of disseminating the research, right? So it's either reading the article or listening to someone talk about their article, which was written. And so we see that the traditional way is a little bit narrow in the sense that it's only basically 2 ways that we can get information. The problem with that is if we face a paywall, say in a journal, the only way to get the research is if your library subscribes to that journal, or you have to pay $30 an article. It's basically prohibitive, right? The other one is if you go to conferences, well, you have that conference, But again, you have to pay to go to that conference. And nowadays, most conferences offer a virtual option, but it's not the case. Right now, for example, AAAL, a conference I usually go to, doesn't offer hybrid format. So if you don't go to the conference, there is no way that you can participate. So this traditional way really limits the amount of visibility that our research can get. We can only get our message to other researchers that are part of our networks, basically. And like they say here, you end up preaching to the choir, meaning only the people that are with you in there. Those are the people that already know what you're doing, and they get the information. But nowadays, with a lot of online venues and a lot of the affordances that the online and digital literacies allow us, we have better ways to disseminate that information that go beyond, other academics. And you might say, well, what is the point of that? The point of that is, why do we do research? Why do you do research? And we do research because we want to share what we found. We want to share what we've learned. And I hope that your goal of showing, or sharing research is to advance our knowledge. And so we have to find, and now the world of research is moving ways that we can find to disseminate that research, not only to other academics, but to the public in general. And so what are these affordances that digital literacies have given us? And on the one hand, like I said, it offers us to be multimodal, to not just limit ourselves to the linguistic, whether it's textual or oral ways, but also visual, spatial, and sensorial. Through a video, we can do many things. And somebody in the chat said, yeah, video talks or seminars are also a way to disseminate information. The other affordance is that a lot of it is online. And because it's online, then you can hyperlink many other things that you would like your audience to get. There is some level of interactivity and personalization. And then also the reach. The reach is important because if you are online and you're not just confined to your journal article or website or the conference, the reach is bigger. And I have here a diagram to explain a little bit more what this means and what it will mean for us as researchers. Well, first, as individuals, right, we can use digital technologies and digital literacies to personalize our information, make it more us, make it look more like us. And many of you have noticed that a lot of the articles look the same, sound the same. Academic writing in that way is very predictable. But maybe we are kind of a funny person, or maybe we are kind of I don't know. And we have other personalities that we can definitely show in an online environment. So identity and presence is a big part. But we can also represent the institution that we work in, not just ourselves, but the institution. And by going in this route, it's more about the interactivity, sharing and networking, which is also two things that are very important when we want to disseminate our information. We don't want to just make it about ourselves. We want to gather a group of people, make it about the community that we belong. And then, going beyond that institution and going beyond the academia is a society. As members of the society, what are we basically contributing to with our research? So we promote that interconnectivity, transmittability, and the visibility of our research. Our research, again, does not just stay in our institutions or in the papers that we write, but is also part of the people and the society with which we live in. And so that's kind of like a very quickly, overview of that multimodality. So we have started, or I have started asking you, what are the traditional ways in which we disseminate research, right? And most of you wrote papers and conferences. And we know that papers have this specific structures. Conference also have these specific structures that don't allow us to be ourselves, don't allow us to share where we come from, and don't allow us to share our stories. But as individuals, we always want to hear a story. We always care and want to know more about the individual. And so the perception that digital literacy somehow may present information as more childish, I would say it all depends, right? Who hasn't really enjoyed a really, well animated rendition of, for example, DNA? You would love to hear that. You would not want to read the paper that these scientists put on, like how they came up with a coronavirus vaccine. But all of you will sit down through a whole 5-minute video on that. And so mimifying something and make it more accessible doesn't mean to simplifying it. You're making it in simple words. You're not simplifying it. Also, the audiences are different. So there is a paper, and I am not arguing here that we should do away with the paper. This is in addition to the paper. So at the end of the day, you have your traditional way of communicating, and then you also have other ways in which you are going to promote access to your research. And so to kind of like go back to the point, would I be making my research less serious? Absolutely not. I would see it in ways that you are actually going to open your research to more people in any way. And I think this is a perfect segue into the storytelling part, because when we do something that is not traditional, what we are doing is basically allowing the information to, one, be told in different ways, but to reach a bigger amount of people than only people that can read academic writing. Have you all heard the expression that academic language is nobody's first language? Like academic English is nobody's first language. Even native speakers of English may not be able to write academically for a journal. And that is because it is a very specialized way of writing and reading that sometimes, if you think about it, prevents the access of people to that information. And so here, what I'm saying is like, well, apart from the traditional ways of communicating research, which are through a journal article and through a presentation at a conference, we also need to engage in storytelling. And for this one, I want to share with you some practices to share. How can you share your research story? So it's not about the story of your life, like, oh, I broke up with my significant one. No. I'm talking about, okay, tell me about your research so that I become interested in getting to know more about you as a researcher. And so storytelling is widely used, in many fields. It's not just a literary thing. They use it in marketing, communication studies. They use it to sell, they use it for websites. They all have a story. And I put here this diagram that, it's for communication, it's for marketing, selling, right? For the content, the way that content is created, to create a brand for yourself. It also allows you to be more creative in the way that you communicate, gives a history, it can go viral, you can show emotions. And then the ways of sharing that story will be different, to share the experiences and build trust between you and the readers or the potential audience. I like this quote that I found, and I really spent some time trying to find who said this quote, because I saw that this is a Native American proverb, but I wanted to know who. I couldn't find it, so I apologize. But the quote is, tell me the facts and I'll learn. Tell me the truth and I'll believe. But tell me a story and it will live in my heart forever. And what does this quote mean? What it means is that stories and storytelling, right, it impacts us. It gives us a different way to think about the message and the points and the world. And we can actually think of it and remember it. It makes it basically unforgettable. And this is the point with storytelling. We want to create a story about our research so that when people read it, they will remember it. Oh, it's the person that did X, Y, and Z. Oh, that's the story about, the research. And so right now, I want you to start thinking about your own research. And what is it that you do when you do your research? All the process that you go through when you are starting a research project, when you're conducting the research project, when you're writing actually the research project, and when you're looking for venues of dissemination, even if in the traditional way, that research project. And so through storytelling, we can make this process more accessible to others so that they don't forget us, or it's not us, but don't forget the research that we are doing. And so in here, I have shared with you, and basically this is what you have to do, 10 things that we're going to practice today, some of them, 10 ways in which you can captivate with your story. So how to prepare your research story? The first thing, okay, who's going to be my audience? So you already, if you prepare a research project and you wrote it, you submit it to a journal, I mean, the target audience for that research paper is already other academics. So other academics is taken care of. How else do you want to, prepare, or do you want to disseminate your research? Who else would be interested in knowing what you found out? Is it students? Is it going to be a group of people? Is it going to be, teenagers in another country? Who is it? And so we have to think beyond, just the publishing rush that I call it, like, let's just get this paper published, forget about it. No, let's not forget about it. Who do you do this research for? Who does it benefit? We have to think about that. And so first, when we are talking about storifying your research, we need to know, okay, who is this story going to be for? So in my field, for example, in applied linguistics, well, I do applied linguistics, meaning, yeah, I do linguistics, but not just for the sake of getting to know more about the language. I want to help educators teach the language better. So my research is always divided into, when I write a paper, other researchers are going to be reading my paper, but I also want to share my findings to teachers because there are pedagogical implications to this paper. So maybe, a secondary audience will be teachers. So when I do a research story, I am going to decide to also target teachers. Maybe I want to target parents, etc. So I want you to think about one particular research, your latest piece of research that you're working on, and I want you to think, who else can be a target audience for the research? And then the second step is to build a strong message. You're going to determine what is the message that you want to communicate, and you're going to do it in simple words. And don't worry, we're going to get in 5 minutes, we're going to get to practice this. The number 3 is to mix modalities. Okay, you already convey your research with text, which is, for a journal. What else could you do to convey that research? And once you decide on the modality, the other thing that I recommend here is to disrupt linearity. So in a research paper, we always start with introduction, literature review, theoretical framework, findings or results, discussion, conclusion, implications, and that's it. Well, when we share a story, we don't have to start at the beginning. We can start with something more attractive or more relevant. And then we can explore different outlets. What venues are we going to share this story? Choose a couple of arguments that are, important to the particular audience that we are thinking of. and present those findings for those particular audiences, and check that we do not use jargon. And then at the end, 2 more things with language, with visuals, with other things we have to show, not tell people. And even with words, we want to show. I'll explain what this means. And then we have to connect personally, making the story personal. And you're going to say, okay, this is where I'm lost. How am I going to make my research personal? So here are the 3 ways that I will be practicing with you for the next hour and a half on how to reach audiences in different ways. The first one is through slide sharing. There are venues such as SlideShare or SlideShare, where people can upload slides instead of the paper itself. You can create slides as if you were going to present a paper, and not necessarily with audio or in the form of a video. And you can upload them, share them, and people from all over the world can access your slides to your presentation and actually cite those slides as they cite your presentation. Or, you know, the slide at the end of the slide, you're going to say, here is the link to my complete paper. And then you hope that by people accessing the slide and getting interested about what you're saying, they actually go and cite your paper, which is, you know, everybody's goal. The other way is to share knowledge through infographics. Who hasn't really been interested in looking at those beautiful things, you know, that have a lot of information in a very short piece. And so this is good so that you can share, for example, in social media, you get people's interest again on the topic, and then you put the link to your paper, to your published paper, and then it's a way for people to go and get to know your research and go and check out your paper. And finally, microblogging, which is one of the ways that I think we can engage more people with this storytelling. So we're going to focus on these microblogs first. So we see that to share your stories or your research, some of you use ResearchGate. Yes, Notion, Google Disk. I'm not familiar with that one. LinkedIn is another one. Telegram, Zoom, Instagram. What else do you use in terms of slides, in terms of maybe infographics? What are other apps that you use? Telegram, Jamboard, Academia, SlideShare, and Zoom. Padlet, excellent. Oh wow, Tableau. Yeah, Tableau to create and share. Actually, I have never used Tableau. My husband uses it all the time. Oh, Genially, webinar. Excellent. And so we see that there are a lot of apps out there to share the information, but all of them will give us, or will have affordances, and some of them won't. And so what I would like you to do right now, I would like you to go to this Jamboard. And what I want you to do for now, I want you to go to the Jamboard, and you're going to find the first deck in the first card in the deck. And I want you to write down your favorite app and tell me what the pros are of using, you know, what are the pros of using that app. So you're going to see something like this, the Jamboard, and you can always ask a sticky note here in the left-hand side, or you can add text. Either way. So if you have a sticky note, you can just write your sticky note and write it. But please remember, tell me the favorite app, and then what is it that you like about it? What is a pro from using that? And the Miro app. So what are the affordances that Miro apps gives us? Can you please write down what is good about Miro? What is good about Google Slides? Some of you had, for example, SlideShare there. And Telegram, you can use both text and media. Okay, so I'll put these Google Slides for group research. And keep going. This is somebody else. Okay. And we see that we have 2 Miro apps. I'll put them together. Google Slides, I'll put them together. Good. Excellent participation. Thank you. So we have seen that a lot of people do talk about the collaboration, right? The ability to collaborate with others, the ability to, let's see, interaction and a multi-purpose. So we see that it's very important. It's something that we all like and want. I like that ResearchGate sometimes sends me a list of notifications of the articles that I might be interested in, right? If you set up your ResearchGate right, you will always know, okay, similar research. And also Google Research does the same thing. I think once a week I get an email with, here are relevant research to what you've been snooping around, basically. So I really like it. Okay, so we have Genially, easy to make infographics, ResearchGate, what else? SlideGo, beautiful template slides. I'm using one from SlideGo, right? Those of you who are familiar with that will know. All right, and so we see that it does give us a lot of affordances, especially with the collaboration, whether it's synchronous or asynchronously, and the fact that it gives us multi-purpose. Somebody even put here the multi-purpose. We can use it to collaborate, or we can use it to disseminate. So we can use it at different levels. All right, so now I would like you to go to the top of that Jamboard and click on the next frame. And now for the next frame, what I would like you to do, I would like you to name that app that you gave me in this first card, and now tell me a downside or a con for using that app. So for example, I put mine here. I love Jamboard. It allows for synchronous collaboration, participation. The downside for Jamboard for me is that it only allows for 20 cards. And I found out when I was teaching, like during the pandemic, all of us had to be online. And I didn't want to make 10 Jamboards. So I had one Jamboard for all of my classes and I ran out of cards. So I had to create another one. Another one will, I mean, it's negative in the sense that I would love to have one Jamboard for one thing and then another Jamboard for one thing, and instead of 20 Jamboards for, 3 things. And so, yeah, Telegram is a word limit that is, the downside. Otherwise, people will be writing essays in there. The SlideGo, the nice features are not free. So we see that a lot of these are, again, behind a paywall, which is not always great. The Miro boards, limitations of 3 boards per user if the account is free. So a lot of the apps actually that are useful, the free features are very limiting. And then there is that paywall. And the Google Slides and limited resources, the fonts are not available. Yeah, and when you work, for example, with different computer applications, like if you have OSs, like operating systems, you have a Mac, then the fonts are going to be different than if you use Microsoft. So, and for YouTube, the viewers, you have to advertise subscription. Yeah, and a lot of times, some of these apps, they are free, but then your message is inundated with ads. Okay. And yeah, teacher account. So we see that every time that we choose an app, we always have to think about what are the affordances that it gives us, but we have to think about what are the limitations so that we can plan for those limitations. Like I said, now we know that some people have a limit, whether it's in words or in number of cards or questions or boards. We have to think, okay, in in what ways can I present this information so that I stay within the limit of the app? So right now, we are going to focus on the first, on the one that I told you, which is the microblogging. This has become a different way of sharing information that is now very common, at least in American settings for American-based journals, and some actually some of the UK-based journals in English. They are actually requiring people to share this information via either tweets. I know you don't have access to Twitter, but it's the same idea, whether it's WhatsApp or Telegram or even TikTok or, you know, whatever social media is to share bits of information to get people interested in the topic, and that they learn more about your research and hopefully go and click on that link that will, you know, take them to the full paper. So I put here a quote by Robert Smith. I don't know the last name. Sorry, the last name got cut. But he said, storytelling is the most powerful way to put ideas into the world. It is a story, not a statement. So what is different between those statements and the story? So we're going to see that. But before that, I would like to see whether you have seen researchers promoting their work in one of the microblogging or messaging platforms. Researchers promoting their work online, yes or no? And so this question I wanted to ask because sometimes we see things and we might not notice what they are, or we don't register what is it that the person is doing. More and more, at least in American setting, they are being asked us to build a brand. And what does that mean is, and this is the same thing as a brand, like as in Nike or Reebok. I'm into sports, so I'm thinking about like tennis shoes. But it's a brand, like the way that we do things, right? And so, okay, so I see that most, well, actually, about half of you have actually seen researchers promoting their work, but also half of you haven't really noticed it. For this one, whether it's in Twitter or WhatsApp, Telegram, even if you go to WeChat or KakaoTalk, if you're in any of those, Facebook, TikTok, now researchers can also be influencers. So there are the influencers of research. So there is like the one person that is always there saying something about an area of research. So I mean, I'm laughing because it's, of course, I'm saying influencers, but for researchers. And I hope that you know what I mean. Is a person that is giving you the tips or that is sharing what they did. And you always know what is going on with the field if you go to their blog or if you go to their account or if you follow them. And so can you please put in the chat some examples of what you have seen these people do? Because now half of you said that, yes, you have noticed people actually sharing or promoting their work in some of these platforms. And I would like you to just, you know, a couple of you or a few of you to give any examples. What have you witnessed? Have you witnessed, Telegram and YouTube blogs posting about their articles being published on Facebook or Twitter? And I'm like, hey, I just published a new article and emojis, right? And all that. Thank you. So we see that people have started to basically advertise, if you will, their research for others to know, number one, that is new research, and to attract not followers per se, but in research is more hits and citations. Who doesn't want their research to cite? Around Valentine's, there is always these things called academic Valentines, and one of the what more famous academic Valentines that I have seen is like, I've read your research. So you give that Valentine to another researcher, because that's a way to say, hey, I care about you and your work. So that's academic Valentine. And so I see that people say, yeah, email after their signature. That is another way to do it, right? It's like one more job. I know it is one more job that, again, but I will question this: in whose interest it is to get the message that you research your findings out. Is it in your best interest for people to know what you found, or is it somebody else's interest? And so I would say, yes, it's one more thing that we have to do. But if the traditional way weren't so traditional, right, we will have to do that anyway. You have to write a research article. And so I would say it's a different way to convey that message. All right, and so right now we're going to start looking at the examples, and I'm reading in the chat that yes, some journals prohibit publishing your research without the journal's permission. That is when you publish the research itself in the words that you share your research. But after we go through this today, you're going to know how you can go about it, about publishing what you do without using the journal itself. The goal for this storytelling is to attract audiences to read your research, is not to make these storytellings instead of the research. And so, okay, so we're going to start looking at that, and we're going to get an exercise on this one. So I want to share this paper. This is on Twitter, and again, this is just Twitter, but I could, if I looked at my WhatsApp, for example, I could get in my group similar posts. So this thing is like calls to check the paper. It's like, oh, check out my paper. I just published, so here is the paper. And it lists the collaborators. So here are my collaborators, come check them out. And then one sentence summary. It's about the advances and challenges of the estimation of micromodals. And then the picture of the paper, that's great. So you see that information, and then you see the paper. So this is a very effective way to let people know that you have published something new. There is a good way, I would say slightly better, where there is some context and humor in there, and something even better, a screenshot of the publication. So this one was just the summary and the paper itself. Here is the screenshot of the publication site when it's basically published. A better way is to do the calls to check out the paper, but using emojis, using the ads, the names, list all the collaborators if you have it, give the one sentence summary, use hashtags so that you can, situate your paper within a larger conversation, use emojis, do the screenshot of the paper on the website and the link to the paper itself. So you see that link to the paper, and anybody who sees this post is going to know what the paper is about, who was it done, and if I want to get to the paper, I can with a click of a button. My question to you now, and I want to hear from at least a couple of people. How can these two tweets that I have presented to you, or these messages, let's call them, can be improved? How can they be improved? Is there an even better way to share this information? All right, but your colleague did get us two more ways that we can actually improve these tweets to make them aware of the research. Somebody in the chat said, I'd invite readers to discuss a few follow-up questions. That's excellent, because it's collaboratively, and make it less academic. Absolutely. And indicate a surprise or contradiction. Yeah, so instead of maybe starting with just the main point, asking a question or set up a contradiction that will force people to be like, wait a minute, this cannot be true. And then, of course, you already got their attention. So again, it's a story, and it's a strategy to catch people's attention and want them to read more about your article. So I will show you very quickly that this person that I introduced here, you know, did the main thing, you know, the main point, as introduced the collaborators, gave the link to the paper, and you know, shout out to the collaborators. But then the paper said, and I will summarize the paper in Twitter style. So here, and somebody said before that you have to use really simple, or what is it, clay for a layman language. Somebody put that in the chat, and that is true. We have to not simplify the research, but explain it with simple words, which is totally, you know, two different things. We don't have to simplify anything. It's just we have to express it in simple ways. But here this person said, okay, I will summarize this paper for you, but first a story. I remember being in high school biology when the human genome had just been sequenced. We had all this new information, but we really didn't know what to do with it yet. It was dark matter. Some criticized the genome project at the time for lack of results. The genome, and so the person goes on and on how she got involved, number one, with the topic in the first place. And then after how many tweets? 23 tweets. Well, don't worry, we're not going to read them all because I want you to do your own tweets or messages. The person basically uses how she got introduced to the topic to explain what she found that she didn't know, what was not known at the time, and how through her research, she was able to fill the gap, if you will, of, you know, what we didn't know. I wanted to point out that the last two tweets, or actually the last three tweets, 5 tweets, number 20, for the long story, please read the paper, meaning she did not really give you the paper. You still have to read it. And then, in all these results suggest that previous attempt, blah, blah, blah. So the main point of the paper. And then number 23 and 24 down here closes with that little story of high school. I became in genetics. It's crazy to think that 10 years later, I would be earning my PhD in genetics and then, you know, something else, first generation PhD. I like to thank my advisor, and then the end. So she made it into a huge story. I bet that if this were your field, you would probably read these 24 tweets. It's interesting to see how somebody did it and how somebody basically started from knowing, you know, almost nothing along with the field to now being one of the people who is adding this research to the field. And so we see that this is an alternative way to disseminate these findings, and you don't have to ask permission from the journal. Perhaps here, the only thing that you would have to ask for permission if you use the same infographics or the graphics that you did for the journal, but you can always replicate similar ones or create new ones to convey the same meaning in a different way. So now that I know you don't have, or not everybody has access to Twitter, but Twitter is just a microblogging site. The idea is to do these microbloggings, basically to give snippets of your research in different ways so that you can catch that attention. And so what we are going to do right now is we are going to try this microblogging activity. But first, I would like to know if you follow a leading researcher in your field. And I want to know in the chat, if you do follow a leading researcher in your field, what is it that this person does? Does the person simply just say they have a new story? Does the person say that, do they blog? And I'll tell you, I do follow quite a few a few researchers, and one of them exclusively has a blog. I know everything, what they think, what they publish, the fights that they get in with other researchers all through their blog posts. While others, I follow the TikTok, they do TikTok. So once a week, I get to see what this person does or thinks. And again, in basically framing the discussion of what they're talking about with one of the papers. Follows them on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. And what is it that they do in there? Do they just share the paper? Yeah, ResearchGate. So ResearchGate, in ResearchGate, if you didn't know, there is a feature once you upload the paper, there is a feature where you can actually send that paper to people automatically recommending the paper. So that is something else that you can do with ResearchGate. They share not only their own research, but also what they read and find inspiring. Yeah. And so through these people, like I said, some people are kind of like influencers, right? They give advice on what else to read, or not advice necessarily, but they give you pointers like, oh, this person published this excellent paper on the word gap or whatnot. Excellent. We see that some of you, yes, follow them, but some people follow them, but not necessarily their research because they don't post it. And then 2 people that said that this was not an option. And now you know that it is an option. You just have to basically Google where they are and see different lines. Some people are like anti-social media, and it's going to be very hard to find their work on social media. But some people have Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Mastodon now, LinkedIn, and everything else. And we are going to do an exercise in the handout. There are different foci that you can give to your tweet. You can tweet about the origin story, like the one that I presented to you. You can also explain the hurdles that you went to when you were designing the research. You can focus on your successes or the failures, like what went completely wrong that you had to redo. You can describe the processes itself and the challenges. So these are always very important, and they're very attractive for people. They want to know more about what worked and didn't work in your research. All right, we are going to do this second. I want to get to the microblogging exercise. So for all of you, you have a choice to download two templates. Template A, which is going to be the template for you to fill out an exercise like of microblogging in Twitter, or template B, which will be a template for WhatsApp or for another site. Okay, so everybody has the template here. So template A is going to look like this. So it's a microblogging template for Twitter, and template B, it's going to be for WhatsApp. So template B will be for WhatsApp. And so what you're going to do, we're going to do this together. Keep in mind that for all of these, every time that you participate, you should not exceed 240 characters. And I would like you to think about your latest research article or the current research project that you're working in that is about to be sent to research journal. So the first part, we're going to do this together. All right, so let's start. We're going to do this individual guided exercise. So this is on your own. So number 1, choose your research article, one that you're about to send or that you have recently published. And I want you to describe your research article in 1 or 2 sentences. This is a little bit challenging because you might think, okay, I'm just going to copy paste my abstract. Your abstract is too long. So tell me what your research is, just in 1 sentence or 2. And once you write it, make sure that your prose is free of jargon, meaning nothing else. Nothing that anybody outside of your field could not understand. So let's do that first. So all of you, again, are going to write down one sentence or two describing your research article. And I'm just sharing mine. This is an article that I'm about to publish. Actually, I sent it to the reviewer. So this is the one I'm going to be working on with you. I would like you to share your 5 sentences with your colleagues. And I want your colleagues to let you know, give feedback. Is this simple? Do you understand it? I mean, I assume that not all of you are in the same field. So do you understand the information? Number 1. Number 2, if you don't, you have to make revisions. And then at the end, I would like you to talk about if you can give each other ideas as to paralinguistic features that you can add to these messages. So for example, if somebody said that the paper is about, I don't know, something specific, does that remind you of a meme or a joke or an emoji? So you're going to help each other kind of like storify the research. Your goal here is for your colleagues to let you know, give you some feedback. Is the language simple? And are there paralinguistic features that you can think of that your colleague can help to enhance the story of what they're saying? And the other, those 2 things. And if there is anything you want your colleague to let you know, how, was this difficult? Was this easy? So to storify it. I don't want to go into discussion of ChatGPT, but if you have not heard of ChatGPT and other AI, you can always use AI to ask for simplified versions of your paper. I would definitely not advise you to use it to write the paper for you, but I would definitely advise you to get it, get it to help you in making a tweet thread about your research. I think you're going to have a workshop on this, but it's just, something to keep in mind. When you prepared the content now for publication in this other venue, you have to choose that blogging site. So remember that handout about the different focus you can give your blogging, the challenge, the story, the successes, the failures. Don't forget to add that. I was in a discussion group and somebody said, well, I'm not doing it for self-promotion as much as thanking my collaborators. Well, that is your focus. You have to give prominence to that. So you have to find ways to add that message, to add the content through a message. So if your message is to thank collaborators, to self-promote, to give a background story, you have to choose that and the best ways to convey that research. And then you have to find what I would be suggesting that you do. Also, you can memify the implications or GIFify your argument. You can make memes yourself. You don't have to go find memes. You can actually meme or create the meme yourself. So if something, I don't know if you're familiar with the Lord of the Rings in this crowd. I mean, there is a famous meme where Boromir is with a ring that he says something like, like it's not so easy to just walk into Mordor to destroy the ring. So I like to use that. Like in my own research, like, oh, it's not easy to write a 5-paragraph paper. And so I make that meme and that I publish it and put it on my blog. Same thing with the Jiffy, the argument. And AI doesn't have legal personality yet. Exactly. So you actually use these features to go and make the memes yourself. Not that you can create or be creative with DALL-E, right? DALL-E is the one where you say, give me, for example, pet robot eating cereal in the beach, right? And it will create the image for you. So somebody said, will be considered plagiarism like ChatGPT creation? If it's your own words and you are just simplifying the argument, I would not. But anyway, that's I guess, a topic for a different workshop altogether. And so here is an example that I want to share with you very quickly of what I did with this publication that I told you. I am about to present this or to publish this. So right now it's in review. So the paper looks like this, right? It's all about ideologies, and it's racial linguistic ideologies. It's about Mexican people. And I'm already preparing what I'm going to present once this gets published. So the first thing that I'm going to get here is like, oh, check out my new study. I explore, the Mexicanness. And one thing that if I'm going to do a thread that I recommend is always put the number. This is not 1 out of 8. That way people know what to explain. But I immediately start putting something else, like a picture of the original tweet. So this paper that I published is about how a Mexican softball team got accused of throwing uniforms and stealing beddings from Japanese hotels. So imagine the chaos it represented in Mexico, because the group was Mexican Americans, not Mexican-born Mexicans representing Mexico. Anyway, you don't care about this, but I need to give you this context to show you that the first tweet is about, again, saying what the paper is about. Second tweet is about my methodology. I analyze comments of this tweet. Number 3, basically how my results. So they did 3 things: attack on language, attack on physiognomy, and misogyny. And then the results, what happens after. The next one, commenters. I explain who the commenters were, and then I put a meme. If you're Mexican, then why are you white? So it gets to just say the point of my paper, that, being Mexican is not a race, right? So then what does it mean for Mexican Americans, the implications? And then tweet number 8, or message number 8, is my call. What are we supposed to do as a society, with these findings? And then I put another meme at the end. And this meme I took from a very popular movie that I knew was going to be popular among, the Mexican American community here. So I think that the Mexican American community, I want them to read this paper that is about how to create ideology. So this is what I already have ready to present right after this publication gets accepted. I already have this. And again, I add the GIF, I add the meme, and I add the other information. And if you see by my emojis, the use of emojis is also something that can give a sense of where the paper is going, what the paper is about, and where the paper is going. So I want to go and show you quickly, where is it? Here. Another way that you could incorporate these story files is through blogs. This I'm just going to show you because it is something that if you follow a researcher and the researcher has a blog, these are ways in which you can actually go and, present that research. So for example, this paper, I wrote this blog on May 2nd. And it was a paper that got published, but if you noticed, I did not say what my publication was. I'm just saying my collaborator coming back one step at a time, feeling hopeful. And I'm celebrating my first journal publication, but I'm not really saying which one. I'm just saying why is it significant for me? And this was the first article that I published after getting my son. And I couldn't write at all. Like I didn't have time. And I'm basically saying that my son participated in these transsemiotic forms. I made up the word. That word doesn't exist. And I'm explaining what they are: the cries, gestures, keystrokes, the fog brain. And then I put a picture of me, with my son here. And then my son, he created, like he writes now with me. And so it's basically the story of me writing this paper. And then I go on to talk about the paper. But what the story for this that went on to Twitter, I tweeted and I put it on Facebook, was on basically being a mom while doing research. The second one is another example. This I published in 2019. And for this one, I mean, I didn't know the audience I was going to get, so I didn't know who to follow to find, but you will see some things, many things like this, where they introduce the research. So here is to access the article free of charge for the next month is here. I put the abstract. I highlighted one thing that, you know, the main point, the highlights of the article, 5 of them. And then what I did here, I discussed the writing of the article, and then I went ahead and I discussed that in Spanish. And why did I do this? In traditional academic writing in English, you know, everything is expected to be in English. But number one, we're multilingual people that are, you know, that have real lives. And that doesn't go or doesn't get into the article. So I use these extra, you know, ways to convey information to also show who I am, you know, my persona, my personal life, as much as, of course, I'm comfortable sharing, and also languages other than English. Because people, like I figure here, well, people that read in Spanish or people that do not have access to English also need to be reached, and they need to have access to the information in the article. So in this case, the 2 examples, if you think about this, I reach into the origin story, you know, what was the origin of that story? Or in the case of my son, you know, the challenges that I faced actually when writing this, you know, this article and what happened in that. Does that mean you have to do it? Absolutely not. But it's one way to basically humanize the research process and to show, again, that individuality that you bring to the storytelling. And so you can do these ones through, you know, through blogs. You can do that to tweets. You can do this through messages on WhatsApp or Telegram. You see the different ways in which you can convey that message that one does not infringe on the rules of the academic publishing. You cannot really just copy paste. You are creating new content and new ways of saying content. Nowadays, you know, they are journals are actually asking you to do this. Sometimes they have their own formats. Sometimes they just ask you informally. And right now, what I have observed is that it's optional, but I don't think it's going to be optional, you know, like just optional. If you want something a little bit more formal, because people say, well, that's too informal. Like somebody said at the beginning, it might be too informal. Well, there is always the infographics. So for infographics, I saw that you have a few apps that are working already. There are different types of infographics that you can use to present your information, whether it's a list, comparisons, a flow chart, visual, a map, a timeline. It depends on the results and the findings of your data, what you want to present and how you want to present it. So there are different types of infographics. And these are 2 that I've created, but there are different websites that you can use for infographics. One of them that I like to use is Pictochart. If you look in Pictochart, if you go to pictochart.com, so pictochart.com, you will see that it gives you a lot of ideas on how to do the infographics. If you notice here, some of them are featured, meaning you have to pay, but you can, filter it through free ones. The main thing here is like, what is it that you want to present? What is the purpose of that infographic? And how is it that you want to use that infographic? So another way that you could share your presentation is through making of a research poster. So research poster is kind of also traditional in the sense that it's very linear. You provide your research questions, you provide your hypothesis or the literature review, the participants, the methodology, your results, and the conclusion. I have added in the presentation a template for you to create your research posters. And a lot of times you can just put this poster together with your tweet or your message, or you put it on your website or your blog. And this is also a quick and easy way to convey information that is not on infographics. So if you don't have access to infographics, this is what you can do. And just remember, pictures are important. High quality pictures will get the point across. You know, the right images, the organization and the clear message are, you know, together will be the best way for you to design this story and convey it on multimodal form. Remember, multimodal form will have to have all the modes of communication, not just that. So have I met new like-minded people? Absolutely, yes. I had just recently come from a workshop about tweeting your article away. So it's this trend about branding your research. And it's not just about you. Right now, as a professor, for example, I have graduate students that are publishing their work. And it is part of my job to brand also, or to help them brand themselves, their research. And it's a way for me to help them advertise their research. So yes, there are people that are doing this, that are giving workshops on this. Right now, we know that journals, at least in the US, are requiring 3 things. 1, highlights. So there are 3 to 5 sentences that are the main points of the article. That's 1. Video abstracts. So now we have video abstracts. That's the topic of my next workshop. We're going to be discussing, you know, how to make a good video abstract, because there are all sorts of video abstracts. And the third one, they call it oasis summaries. So these are the summaries that are basically in very simple terms that we have to provide for non-academic audiences. So right now, of the 3 that I mentioned, the only one that right now is required are the 3 to 5 highlight points. The other 2 are kind of still, if you want to, but the way we are seeing it is that it is becoming now a requirement for publication, because universities, public universities get public funding. So now they're very adamant on giving this research to the people who are funding our projects. So the question is the necessity to promote pages in platforms like Facebook. I think it doesn't have to be Facebook. I think it all depends, you know, who your audience is. I primarily choose Twitter. The people that I want them to learn about my research are on Twitter. A lot of teachers are on Twitter. That's why I choose that. But if I decide that another venue like TikTok for some of my research is, you know, that's where I will be. So it is thinking about who the audience is and what's the purpose of you sharing that is. Then I have, but it's rare cases when we publish a paper. So we also have to engage with audience all the time about other stuff. So wait, it is rare cases when we publish a paper. We also have to engage with audience at the same time. A lot of people are going to reach out to you. I have emails, for example. People choose email. In all of our papers at the end, we say, well, we're from this institution. This is our email. And people do reach out. You'll be invited to talk in other institutions, in other classrooms. So where you engage with other researchers and other people is going to be different ways. Some of my research got to some university in Chicago. I really didn't know the people in Chicago, but as a result of my participation at the university in Chicago, some people actually gave my Facebook. This was a Facebook post. It was like a conversation that I had with myself on Facebook. You know, we put like a thread basically about the research on the second generation Mexican code switching on Facebook. And then they were giving that, like the people were actually getting into my research, learning about it, just to tell me, oh my goodness, we do this. This is so true. And it's so validating as a researcher that people are telling you, yeah, this happens to not just to the 5 people you studied. So yeah, the engagement with other audiences can take multiple shapes. According to your experience, what was the reaction to the microblogs or tweets that you have written? Any eye-opening reflections? Oh yeah, invitation to conferences. As a result of one of my tweets, I was pitched by a friend who, anyway, long story short, I just gave a presentation on multilingualism in academic writing at Open University in the UK in February as a result of my tweet, or one of my tweets, because I said, my point in my tweet, just like I did in my blog, I wrote in English for my paper, and then I wrote in Spanish. And I was basically making the point that academic writing should not be just like in English. We are not just like monolingual English speakers. And so I am basically making a case for multilingualism in academic writing. And so, yes, I got invitations. And the story of these people in Chicago, I got invited by a non-for-profit, had nothing to do with research that they had done. And I'm telling these, some you might say, well, it's coincidental. Yeah, but I love talking to people outside. Oh, and by the way, one of mine got picked up by a radio station and a podcast. And so I got invited for that. Again, had nothing to do with like the paper itself. It got picked up from like this news person that is also bilingual that said something, and then it got picked up by a podcast. So I ended up being in the newspaper and then in the radio. And as a result of my story and the radio with NPR, National Public Radio, and TPR, the one in Texas, there was a drive away moment. And what that meant is like the story and the interview was so engaging that the head of the ESL in the North ISD district here in San Antonio invited me to be a keynote at their professional development day, something that I didn't even know that it existed. I mean, I'm not into the public school. So yes, it does get you self-promoted, but more than anything, it gives, voice to the voices you are giving in your own research. Oh yeah, paying for making your page in Facebook well-known, the same about YouTube. Oh, okay. So somebody's asking whether basically it's, I don't know if the question is whether it is worth paying for somebody to make your page or to promote these. I don't pay for any promotion. So all of that, in my next workshop, we're going to go a little bit through analytics and where to find and learn about analytics for YouTube, especially. And also I can go through like ResearchGate and know in academia more than ResearchGate when the engagement is. So what you could do, there is a page that you can access to see your engagement, which countries are the ones that access your presentations, that access your videos. In this case, the tweets. There is not a way that I know about messages. So when I do everything in WhatsApp, I just hope that people see it. But there are other ways in which you can monitor that reach for people and the engagement. So I can talk about this. Well, I will talk about this in the next workshop. But yeah, I would not recommend you pay. Everything can be self-done. It cannot be done from one day to the other. That I can tell you. My website, it's been in the making. I mean, it's not a professional website. You probably can tell. I have not paid anyone, but I have had it for 10 years. So I think you always start slow. Your first tweet was kind of like a nightmarish, not the best tweet that they could do. But now you have many ideas on how to do them better. And I mean, if you Google my name, you're going to find some tweets that you're going to say, what? That's not what she said in the website. Like she's doing the opposite or whatever. I think it's because you always learn. Start, with few things, see what works, see what didn't work. And then you just need to, work from there and improve.